one of those men was a priest. My relationship with my abusers is complicated by the fact that at the time, I didn't perceive what I view myself as a victim, but clearly I am one. Looking back, I see the effects that this had on me. In the years after what happened, I fell into alcohol and nihilistic partying. It lasted well into my 20s. A few years ago, I realized it was time to do something good with my life. I started focusing on work, but the black comedy, the gallows humor, and the love of shock value I developed in my 20s never really went away. I've reviewed the tapes that appeared a few days ago in the proper context, and I don't believe that they say what is being reported. Nonetheless, I do say some things on the tapes that I do not mean, and which do not reflect my views. My experiences as a victim led me to believe that I could say almost anything on this subject, no matter how outrageous. But I understand that my usual blend of sassy, gay British sarcasm, provocation, and gallows humor might have come across as flippancy. A lack of care for other victims, or even worse, as seems to have been the case in reports, advocacy. I'm horrified by that impression. I would like to restate my disgust at adults who sexually abuse minors. I'm horrified by pedophilia, and I have devoted large portions of my career to exposing child abusers. I've exposed 3 of them in my reporting, which is 3 more than most of my critics. I've repeatedly expressed disgust at pedophilia in my feature and opinion writing, and I was also the first journalist in the UK to ask, after Jimmy Savile's death, whether the real story of his rampant child abuse would ever be told. My professional record is very, very clear. But I do understand that the videos that you have seen, even though some of them were deceptively edited, paint a different picture, and I am partly to blame for that. I do not advocate for illegal behavior. I explicitly say in the tapes, in a section that was cut from the footage that you've seen, but I think the age of consent currently is about right. I do not believe that any change in the legal age of consent is justifiable or desirable. I don't believe that sex with 13-year-olds is okay. When I mentioned the number 13, I was talking about myself and the age that I lost my virginity. It can strike some Americans as unusual or strange, but my mother's native Germany, the age of consent is 14. We have a different approach to these things sometimes in Europe. I shouldn't have used the word boy. Gay men often use boy or girl to mean men of consenting age. But I understand how heterosexual people may not have realized that, and that was an error. I was in fact talking about my own relationship when I was 17 with a man who was 29. The age of consent in the UK is 16. I did say that there are relationships between older gay men and younger gay men that can help the younger gay man escape from a lack of support or understanding at home. That's perfectly true, and every gay man knows it. I'm certainly guilty of imprecise language, which I regret. And anyone who suggests, however, that I turn a blind eye to illegal activity or to the abuse of minors is unequivocally wrong. I'm implacably opposed to the normalization of pedophilia, and I will continue to report and speak accordingly. To repeat, I do not support child abuse. It's a disgusting crime of which I have personally been a victim. The remarks I made on podcasts and interviews more than a year ago were about my personal life experiences, but I didn't make that clear. I will not apologize for dealing with my life experiences in the way that I choose to, which is through humor and provocation. No one can tell me or anyone else who has lived through these experiences how they should best deal with those emotions. But I am sorry to other abuse victims who may have interpreted what I said as flippant or uncaring. If my own personal way of dealing with what happened to me has hurt you, I will never stop making jokes about taboo subjects. Go into any drag bar or gay club and you will hear joke after joke after joke about clerical sexual abuse. I'm not afforded the same freedom to make those kinds of jokes because the media chooses to selectively define me as a political figure in some circumstances and a comedian in others, and also, of course, because I'm a conservative. But I said some things on those internet live streams that were simply wrong. My employer, Breitbart News, has stood by me while others caved. They've allowed me to carry conservative and libertarian ideas to communities that would otherwise never have had them. They have been a significant factor in my success, and I'm grateful for the freedom and for the friendships that I forged there. But I would be wrong to allow my poor choice of words to detract from my colleague's important job, which is why today I'm resigning from Breitbart effective immediately. This decision is mine alone. When your friends have done right by you, it's only right to do right by them. And for me, that means stepping aside so my colleagues at Breitbart can get back to the great work they do. My book, Dangerous, has received interest from other publishers after my previous publisher, Simon & Schuster, informed me they no longer wish to release it. The book will come out this year as planned, with perhaps an additional chapter. I'll be donating 10% of my royalties to child sex abuse charities. I haven't ever apologized before, and I don't anticipate ever doing it again. Name-calling doesn't bother me, and misreporting doesn't bother me. But to be a victim of child abuse, and at the same time be accused of being an apologist for child abuse, is absurd. I regret the things that I said. I don't think I've been as sorry about anything my whole life, and this isn't how I wanted my parents to find out about this either. But let's be clear about what's happening here. This is a cynical media witch hunt from people who do not care about children. They care about destroying me and my career, and by extension, my allies. They know that although I made some outrageous statements, I've never actually done anything wrong. They held this story back. They held the footage back. Footage has been out there in the wild for over a year because they don't care about victims. They don't care about children. They only care about bringing me down. They will fail. I will, in the next couple of weeks, be announcing a new independently funded media venture of my own and a live tour in the coming weeks and new campus tour dates, part of my new Troll Academy tour. I started my career as a technology reporter who wrote about politics, but I have since mutated and grown into something quite different and much bigger. I'm now a performer with millions of fans in America and beyond. I'm grateful for the tens of thousands of messages that I have received. And I look forward to making you all laugh, cry, and think for many, many decades to come. My full focus is now going to be on entertaining and educating everyone, left, right, and otherwise. If you want to brand or stereotype me, good luck with that. Don't think for a moment that anything that has happened in the last 48 hours will ever stop me being as offensive, provocative, and outrageously funny as I choose on any subject I please. America has a colossal free speech problem. The land of the First Amendment has some of the most oppressive social restrictions on free expression anywhere in the Western world. I'm proud to be a warrior for free speech and creative expression, and I want everyone in America to have the right to do, be, say, read anything. I want people to be able to dress however they want. I want people to be able to play whatever video games they want. I want people to realize their potential and have the full limits of creative expression available to them. That isn't currently the case in America. America is a country I love. America is a country that has taken me in. Its people have taken me in, and I'm very grateful for that. I am proud to be a free speech warrior in America, and I will continue to do that. I'm not going anywhere. Thank you very much. I will take perhaps 5 questions.
Milo.
Yeah.
So, the interview you did with Nightline with us at ABC, you said you never say anything you don't believe.
Yes.
So, what you said in that podcast, do you believe that? And what exactly is this about? Is this an apology? Is this about you? Or is it about you no longer have a book deal and you no longer see that impact?
This is about me apologizing for saying things I did not mean. This is me apologizing to other victims of abuse for comments that may be perceived by them as insensitive or flippant, which was unintended. You sort of freewheel and spitball in these, boozy, long, late-night internet live streams. Some of them go on for 3-4 hours. And you play with ideas, and sometimes these things come out half-baked, or they're expressed in ways you didn't intend. For the most part, I do not believe that these videos show what reporting claims that they show. But for those statements I did make where I misspoke, I'm here today to apologize.
You spoke to some of the organizers of the Berkeley protests, and they say what's happening right now, which you just said, and what's happening with you in the mainstream media, this is the victory for them. Without those protests, without shutting you down, the mainstream media could never look at you with a microscope. What do you say to that?
Well, this isn't really about me crowing, but I don't think this has done any harm for my profile, and I think more people are going to read what I have to say on the subject of free speech as a result of this. It may not be from the same publisher, and it may not be from under the same masthead, but I have an opportunity now through what has happened, and this has not been a pleasant 48 hours for me. I have an opportunity now through what has happened to reach an even larger audience, and I intend to do so.
Milo, I stand by your comment of calling Jones.
Could you be respectful of other people, please? Yeah. I'm on an O1B, Alien of Extraordinary Ability. Yeah.
I'm looking at the scene here. I'm not sure that we could have a news conference with researchers talking about curing cancer and would have as much turnout here.
Yes.
What does this tell us about our culture? That there is so much interest about you,
Yes.
about this controversy,
Yes.
and about what's happened over the last month from Berkeley to this point.
Well, I think it says something very obvious and very clear, which is that America has a gigantic free speech problem. Both the left and the right are guilty of that. In the 90s, it was the religious right saying that video games could make you violent. Now it is feminists and social justice warriors saying video games can make you sexist. And all of the associated forms of school marmishness and nannying and pearl clutching, language policing, the safe space culture, trigger warnings culture, all of this stuff is designed to restrict the free expression of the rest of America. And it is perpetrated by elites on the people. It is perpetrated by well-funded, well-educated people in coastal cities on the rest of us, on perfectly innocent pursuits and perfectly innocent expressions and perfectly innocent language. My rapid rise in the last year, I think, is testament to the huge hunger from both sides. Because I got to tell you, most of the people at my talks are not your typical college Republicans. My rise and the interest in this story is testament to the fact that America is crying out for somebody who will say the unsayable, who will break taboos, and who fearlessly resists those who want to clamp down on free speech and free expression. That's what I think it says, and I think it's very clear. Okay.
Are you at all concerned that while you've been sort of straddling the line, walking up to the line, you've now crossed over the line into a place of irrelevancy?
No. If I thought that was the case, I wouldn't be making an appeal now.
That's why you would be making an appeal.
Well, no. If I thought I'd crossed the line over into irrelevancy, then I would be with my tail between my legs somewhere. I'm apologizing for a small cluster of remarks that I made, some of which I think are taken out of context. There was obviously some deceptive editing that happened there. One or two of those comments I did not mean. They did not reflect my beliefs. And I think, I've never apologized about anything else before. I don't anticipate doing it again. But this particular subject strikes pretty close to home for me. So it was very important for me to clarify my position on this particular subject, given my personal history with it.
Do you stand by your comments?
Sorry, say again. Hi.
I think that there are homophobic undertones. The fact that this particular topic is the one that finally crossed the line, given that gay men have historically been acquainted with pedophilia, and given that you have done some rather controversial things in the past.
Well, statistically speaking, there's no evidence to suppose that pedophilia and homosexuality are related, though I think that the numbers show a slight preponderance. I think pedophiles are slightly more likely to be gay. That is to say, slightly more likely to be into boys if they're men than into girls, but not by very much. I know that CPAC has a long and complex history with gays. I know that one of the organizers of CPAC was fired for trying to welcome, log cabin Republicans into the tent. I know that there have been a lot of problems with CPAC and homosexuals. I think if you look at the crowds that follow me around, Louisiana State University, we filled a 1,200-seater in 48 hours. I came out in full drag, as a drag queen, to give a talk about fat shaming. And 1,200 Republicans gave me a standing ovation. This simply hasn't happened in the history of this country before. And I'm very proud to be introducing what I would consider to be normal gays to, Republican and conservative America. We don't all have to be like, the stereotype, the pink suit and ludicrousness of a lot of gays that you see on television. I think if there's a problem, it's the way that gays are represented on TV. I've probably done more for the image of gays in the flyover states than all the associated than all of the gay charities, gay activist groups, and gay publications for the last 30 years. I think they've seen me, and I get emails every day along these lines. They've seen me, and they've realized. I get emails from mothers sometimes, and they say, my son is gay, and I was terrified that he was going to turn into Ross Matthews. But you've made me realize actually that gay people can be okay. I'm very proud of that. I'm very happy of that. For that, if there's any extent to which homophobia played into CPAC's decision, I certainly wasn't aware of it, and I know that many people within CPAC have been very supportive of me appearing there. I'm not a traditional representative for American conservatism. I've never painted myself that way. I'm a visitor to this country. All I can really do is express my opinion, having been here for a year and a half. But given the level of interest, the sheer number of people who seem to love me, and who want to, buy my book and come to my shows and all that kind of thing, I think it was only logical that CPAC would seek to book somebody like that, somebody who is obviously the most interesting thing happening in American conservatism right now.
Milo,
Yeah. Yes. Yes. No, I don't intend to go head to head with Breitbart in any respect whatsoever. But I will be doing a lot more of the same that I have been doing, just not under the Breitbart banner. We have received some preliminary funding for that. I expect to be raising more. I think it'll just be more of the same: college tours, probably commercial tours, more TV, more video, more everything. I'm going to focus now, on entertainment, on education, and less perhaps on journalism. I'd sort of outgrown my role, I think, as technology editor at Breitbart, which is fairly obvious. I'm going to be doubling down on education and entertainment, and see where it takes me the next year. I can do one or two more. Yeah.
Okay, so when the Gateway funded, I discovered that the original attacks on you came from two key sources: Democratic activists with deep ties to George Soros, in addition to former presidential candidate Evan McMullen and the CPAC. So these Never Trump websites and individuals continue to invest vast amounts of money and time in attacking Trump supporters and loved members of the current administration. My two questions would be: what do you think of these anti-Trump groups and their continued attacks? And my second one is: do you think that these groups have any future in the Republican Party? What would you say to them?
Publications and activist groups and political operatives who insist on preserving their own power. These are people who have sold out your country to line their own pockets. These people are dying, if not already dead. Their publications have no readers. They're, very obvious that this was a highly coordinated and very well-planned and well-funded attack on me. But I have to take responsibility for what I said. Nonetheless, everyone at home can see what's happening. And everyone at home can appreciate when, Donald Trump is voted into the White House, but the whole Republican Party absolutely hates him, that something has to change. There has to be a break at some point. This sort of populist nationalist revolution that is happening, the anti-political correctness, pro-free speech revolution that is happening all over the Western world is not going anywhere. For the last 30 years, speech codes have been the order of the day, and right-wing politicians have run terrified and screaming for allegations of racism and sexism, and basically given ground on almost every serious issue. Well, that's changing with the rise of bold electorates and bold politicians. Donald Trump's an example of that. I'm an example of a cultural figure related to that social change. And we are going to represent the next 30 years. This last 48 hours has been a horrible and humiliating and degrading experience for me. But I'm going to be around for 30 years. Many of the people who are organizing everything they possibly can to take me down will not be. I'll do one or two more. We've had you, so I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead. Well, I'd just like to clarify there. I said in a segment of the video that was cut, which most of you will not have seen, that I felt that the age of consent was, I quote, about right, unquote. I have no desire or wish, I don't think it's desirable or justifiable to change the age of consent. I think the age of consent in my mom's native Germany at 14 is too young.
Okay, so one question I have is on behalf of the state of Texas. Right, you do issue very provocative statements.
Yep.
This is one that you said that is very offensive and messes with Texas. You said gay marriage is not a civil rights struggle. Stop comparing gays to blacks. And gay men are slaves because we beg.
Yes.
I'm going to tell you the 1964 Civil Rights Act was signed by the greatest president of the United States, Lyndon Baines Johnson. Texas. He signed it because Texas is next to Mexico, which is very close to your dad's precious war. He signed that because Texas was showing up to the workplace because white men were intimidating, physically
Civil Rights Act has never, ever intended specifically to collapse all the debates Johnson includes the restrictions for returns. Her argument is not only unoriginal and adios American, it's also ignorant and racist. I was wondering if you would bubble the statement or if you have a leg to stand on.
I think it was a funny joke, and I stand by it, and I don't take comparisons to Ann Coulter to be insulting. She sells a hell of a lot of books. Yeah. There's been interest, obviously, since Simon & Schuster decided at the first opportunity to jettison it. I'm sure they'll get a lot of plaudits in New York cocktail parties, but the people who actually want to read it, the people who support me and believe in what I'm saying, in their millions, will, I'm sure, seek out wherever it is published by the next person. We expect to be able to announce something about that in the next couple of weeks. The book will come out. The book will come out this year as planned. I don't think that's clear yet. I probably won't go to CPAC. I don't think it would be indecorous for me to go and cause a fuss. Sorry. Alex has been nothing but supportive. He's been one of the. I think Alex Milo is the editor-in-chief of Breitbart. In case some of you don't know, he is probably the most gifted editor of his generation. He has extraordinary abilities. He's taken Breitbart from an upstart insurgent website to the number 3 news organization in the country. Anyone in here from the New York Times or CNN, you are the only people in the room who have more readers than Breitbart now. And that is mainly due to the great insight and gifts of Alex Milo. He's been nothing but supportive to me. And as for the specifics of announcements or whatever, I think I'll keep that confidential. Let's do.
People who don't know you, what's your relationship with Steve Bannon? When was the last time you spoke to him?
Steve Bannon brought me into Breitbart. Steve Bannon is one of the most formidable and brilliant political operatives of his generation. I have nothing but admiration for the guy. Not an easy person to work for if you're a slacker. Not an easy person to work for if you don't show up to work or if you don't really give everything your all. Fortunately, I'm not one of those people. I haven't spoken to Steve for a very long time, since before he took the job at the White House. Yeah, Steve Bannon, has populated Breitbart with, a disproportionately Jewish ethnic minority and gay senior editorial team. And we are, we were, I should say, far more diverse than any of the people criticizing Breitbart for alleged racism or God knows what it is today. Yeah, go ahead.
What would you say to other 13-year-olds who find themselves in your situation right now, who feel that they don't have someone an adult to talk to and they are being preyed upon by any older men?
Yeah, some of the comments I made about sort of sexual assault, sexual abuse have come across as callous because I think the message that I was trying to send was it doesn't have to ruin your life. It didn't ruin mine. It certainly didn't. Well, it certainly affected mine. It remains to be seen whether it's ruined it. But I would encourage people to not buy into the victimhood culture, not let it define the rest of your life, not let it color every decision you ever make and everything that ever happens to you. It was only really on reflection that I realized that most of my 20s, which was spent drinking and partying and, waking up in random places in Ibiza, at 4 p.m. on a Tuesday, were probably me running away from something. So I might not have perceived at the time that was the root cause, but I'm pretty sure it was. And it took me until I was about 30 to straighten myself out. But I did, and I'm now doing very well. And I'm very grateful for all the people who have my back, which is, my inbox has been extraordinary. I think there's a big gulf between the public and the media in this country. Nobody really would be surprised or outraged by that statement. Most journalists simply have no understanding whatsoever of the country they're reporting on. I have a really good understanding of this country, and that's just from being here for a year as a foreigner. Maybe it takes a foreigner to sort of come with open eyes and without prejudice and without preconceptions. Most journalists simply don't understand the country they're reporting on. I do. I just want anybody in my position. I lost my virginity at 13, and the things that happened to me happened between 13 and 16. It's not the worst thing that's ever going to happen to you. And I know that some people will find that in itself an outrageous statement, but it simply isn't the worst thing that will ever happen to you. Going bankrupt is worse. All kinds of other things that may happen to you in your life could be worse. So don't allow it to define you, and don't allow it to shape your decision making, because then they win. All right, I'm going to do maybe one or two. Yeah, go ahead.
You hear them outside.
I can,
What do you
yes.
want to say to your protesters?
Well, it's a very simple thing. You know, people who actually come to my shows, who read my columns, tend to end up quite liking me, even if they don't agree with me on everything. People who just read the headlines obviously have the views that these people outside have, and that is a part of the failing of the media in this country. They have gleefully reported things about me they know aren't true over the last 48 hours, with the result, that you now all know. And you guys are responsible for that, and fuck you for that, because you did a bad thing. I take responsibility for the words I used. I take responsibility for the things that I said. But I don't believe that any journalist or writing a story, or any editor pressing the publish button, believes that I sincerely advocate for or support pedophilia. It's an absurd and ridiculous allegation, but they gleefully printed it anyway. America knows better and knows different. I'll take one more question.
Milo,
Yeah, okay.
you're saying you're taking responsibility for your comments now, but as you said, many of those comments were made months ago, a year ago.
Yeah.
Why did it take you this long to make these kinds of statements?
Well, frankly, I didn't even remember that I'd made them. I didn't even recall them. I mean, these videos have been out there for over a year. I do hundreds of interviews a month. There are thousands of hours of me shooting shit on YouTube out there. And I don't remember individual provocative statements that I've made until they're brought to my attention. Nobody would. Having had them presented to me and having been asked about them, I realize now that there are two statements in particular that do not reflect my views, for which I apologize. The rest, I think people, I don't see why I can't make a joke about clerical sexual abuse, but a drag queen in a club 2 blocks away can. And I think that's a double standard, and it's got a lot to do with politics. Thank you. I have negative feedback about everything all the time. If I read that, I wouldn't get the chance to do anything else. My life is one long fielding of negative feedback, but certainly nothing serious about those. No, and that's how you know that this is a politically motivated witch hunt. And the other way you know is that people knew about this stuff a year ago and didn't print anything. They waited until the most damaging possible moment, and everybody knows that. And I think America will judge accordingly. Thank you very much for coming. Thanks a lot.
We are back. Welcome back to our studio in Auburn, Alabama. We have just finished watching Milo Yiannopoulos' press conference live.
You're listening to the internet audio feed, Right Side Broadcasting coverage of Milo Yiannopoulos' press conference addressing controversial comments about pedophilia and announcing that he is resigning from Breitbart, as well as the publisher did drop his book, but another publisher is going to be picking it up, and it will be coming out this year as planned. We're going to rejoin Right Side Broadcasting. There was a break in their coverage just for a moment. They lost their feed, but we're going to go ahead and rejoin the feed.
All that stuff is behind me, and I got a bunch of new stuff going on. So Milo began the press conference by reiterating some of the stuff he had said in his Facebook responses yesterday to this whole controversy, saying that his views had been misrepresented, that he didn't ever endorse pedophilia, he didn't condone pedophilia. He was very clear about saying he is against pedophilia and disavows it and finds it horrid. He went on to say that he is resigning from Breitbart. I'm sorry. I hear there might be some protests outside. So if we have more on that, we will bring that to you. Not outside our studio, outside of in New York at the Breitbart. In New York outside the press conference. So continuing on what he said, he denied that he in any way supported or condoned pedophilia. He came out strongly against it. He also confirmed what we had heard before, that he was resigning from Breitbart. Very interestingly, had nothing negative and all positive things to say about Breitbart. He basically said, this is my choice to resign, and the reason he gave for resigning from Breitbart is that roughly speaking, he didn't want to saddle them with having to deal with all of the stuff that was coming along with him getting this bad press from this. He did not blame them. He did not say, I'm leaving them because they don't like me anymore. He just characterized them positively, supportively, and all that, which I find a bit surprising because in the last 2 days, as we've been reporting here, Breitbart has literally not mentioned on their whole entire homepage, which covers, it's like a whole page of news, big news and little news. They have literally not even mentioned the Milo CPAC story. So it seemed to me like they were distancing themselves from him. And whatever Milo, maybe this wasn't his real reason for resigning, but the reason he gave, he said he's totally good feelings towards Breitbart and that he didn't want them to have to deal with his stuff coming from this. And also it seemed like he was moving on with his career and going to something else. And that's another thing he announced. Milo announced that he is going to be starting his own media, I don't know if it was a firm or a project or a network, but some kind of media entity he will be starting soon. And he announced that. We don't know yet what that will be. So we have that to, see what we will look forward to seeing whatever that actually ends up being, but no more details on that right now. Milo also announced that his book will come out. So his book, Dangerous, which was supposed to come out in June, published by Simon & Schuster. Simon & Schuster canceled the publication of that book very soon after CPAC uninvited Milo, from CPAC yesterday. So that can't happen yesterday. Milo today said there's been lots of interest from different publishers for his book, and he guaranteed that his book would come out by the end of the year. So that was more news from the press conference. What else did he say? Milo said that he was moving into a part of his career where he was going to focus more on, the two words he used were education and entertainment. He said that he really wanted to focus on educating people. I believe one of the things he emphasized was about free speech issues, which he feels very strongly about. But he also said entertainment as well. So I'm guessing, if that holds true, that his new media venture will involve education and entertainment in some form. He also did say that he was setting up a new tour of colleges, a new speaking tour. I believe he said of colleges. If he didn't say of colleges, I have to imagine they will be prominent. So we have that going on. And then he took a number of different questions, and I'm just trying to think of the key things that came up in those questions in my head as I just sat here watching the press conference with all of you. And I should say to you also that as we are doing our post coverage here, we would love to hear your comments and your questions and your take on what just happened. So if you'd like to write in, you can go and direct message me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is @Lookner, @LOOKNER, and you can direct message me there, and I will get that comment here. Or you can email me at steve.lookner@rsbn.tv. I'm just going to real quick check my Twitter feed and see if anyone has any written in yet with any responses to this press conference. So, and also it was interesting, Milo said he was only going to take 5 or 6 questions, and then he kept saying, I'll take 1 or 2 more, but, he ended up speaking for about a solid half hour and taking a lot of questions. So we have a question here from Ham Freed, and Ham Freed says, do you think Milo's media venture will be in a Breitbart style or maybe more in a right side broadcasting style, which is this channel here? And would a Milo under Breitbart not be better for the left? As I heard Steven Crowder say, Bannon had not put restrictions on who they could talk to. Oh, and keep up the good work we donated to RSBN a few days ago. Thank you so much, Hamfried. So as to what Milo's new media venture will be like, and it seems like you're saying, will it be more of like a Breitbart thing, where Breitbart's like a newspaper kind of thing, but a newspaper online. It's all print and all articles. Our channel here and other channels like us, like CRTV, is like this focus on video programming. And you ask an interesting question, Hamfried. You're saying, will his new venture have video programming and like TV shows, but on the internet kind of thing, or will it be more print kind of stuff in articles that you read? For all I know, he's thinking of coming up with a channel that he could put on cable networks. Will he start his own programming network? I have no idea. I have to imagine that he's at least thought of the idea of him appearing on screen or producing on screen like video programming. So we'll see if that happens. And he certainly he is aware that he has become more popular, and that came out in the press conference. You saw him refer to several different things about how a lot of people were aware of him, and he was introducing, for example, a lot of people he thought to a new idea of what gay people could be like. So he's aware that he's popular, and maybe. He thinks that she should move from just giving speeches and writing articles to doing more produced programming. I don't know what it'll be, so it'll be interesting to see what he ends up doing. So thank you for the question, Hamfried. So again, this is Right Side Broadcasting. You just saw here live Milo Yiannopoulos' press conference. I'm Steve Luckner. This is the post show for the press conference where we're talking about the press conference, talking about what happened, and getting your reaction to what happened. So if you have comments or you have questions and you'd like to input, I'm happy to read your comments and questions and share them with everyone. Write to me. Go to Twitter, direct message me at @Luckner, @LOOKNER, and or email me at steve.luckner@rsbn.tv. I'm just going to check and see if there's other feedback here that people are writing in. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Chad Walden says, according to Chad, Fox News is still reporting Milo endorses pedophilia. What can we do to stop the spread of these lies? Chad, this is something that Milo addressed in the press conference. And Milo, there was a part of the press conference where Milo said something like, the mainstream media is constantly misrepresenting what I say. And they've done it with this incident as well. And Chad, you seem to be pointing out that they're still doing it. And I even, I've seen it this morning where I saw mainstream media sites, articles about Milo, where they did say things like he condoned pedophilia. They basically, the New York Times article that I read this morning about this repeated this assertion that Milo condoned pedophilia. Now, to me, if you've spent any time watching the videos and you've looked up pedophilia in the dictionary, it's clear that he didn't condone pedophilia in the videos. Pedophilia, so it amazes me, and Milo made this point in the videos. Whatever you think of Milo, he made this point. He said, the definition of pedophilia, I've looked it up on Wikipedia. This is me talking, Steve. I've looked it up on Wikipedia, and I've looked it up on dictionaries online, and Milo is right about this. The definition of pedophilia is sexual attraction to somebody who's prepubescent. They haven't gone through puberty yet. And if you watch what Milo said on the videos, whatever you think about it, even if you were offended by it, what he, to me, clearly did not do in anything I've seen is condone pedophilia. Now, the New York Times today, I read this article this morning reporting on the story, and they just repeat this claim that he condoned pedophilia. Now, to me, if the New York Times article writer knew what pedophilia meant, which they should know writing for the New York Times, and they had watched the videos, which they should do writing this article for the New York Times, they would never have written this unless they were intentionally wanted to misrepresent what Milo said. And this isn't, I have seen this in other articles too, so I'm saying the New York Times because I just read it this morning, but other things too. So what I am not saying is that people couldn't have a reasonable view on which they were offended by some things Milo said in the interviews. I'm not saying that at all. And I certainly think that's anybody's right to have that view. And I certainly think a mainstream media outlet could, if they were offended by these videos, write some article explaining why they thought the videos were offensive. So, and that's their choice if they want to do that. My problem and your problem, the person who wrote in, whose name I can't remember at the moment, and it was Chad, and what Milo's problem is when these media outlets misrepresent what he said, and they just repeat assertions other people make. And CPAC said yesterday he condoned pedophilia, and so it seems like the New York Times and other mainstream media outlets just repeat this, and they don't actually go and listen to his videos and listen to what he says and read what he says. And that's where I get upset about it too, and I see, Chad, you're getting upset about it. And so it's very disturbing to me that this happens. And Milo also said in the press conference, he said something like, the press doesn't want to report when I give a speech, they don't want to actually report what I actually say in the speeches, and I make lots of complex points and non-simple arguments, and I'm saying more than sound bites, and they won't report that. And he said, somebody asked him about the protesters outside of his press conference, and they said, what do you think about that, Milo? And one of the things he said is, well, this is part of what happens when the mainstream media, they don't actually represent what I say. They misrepresent what I say, and they take other people's headlines about what I say, and they just repeat it without doing the fact checking. And people read this stuff. And he said, when people read what the mainstream media says about me, then they're angry and they want to go protest. But Milo also said, when people actually sit down and watch one of my speeches or read one of my articles, and they really take the effort to understand what I have to say, they might not even agree with me, but he said they end up liking me. That's what he said. And if not liking him, I'm guessing they're not as angry as with him as they would be if they just read the headlines about him. So, Chad, I get your concern, and I think this is a concern of Milo's as well, and I get frustrated, Again, I personally think people can think whatever they want about him, and people can think he's right, or people can think that he's wrong, and people can be offended by what he said in the videos. But the one thing that shouldn't happen, and this to me is whether somebody's speaking is on the right or on the left or in between, people should, before criticizing someone and saying they shouldn't be allowed to speak or protesting them or whatever, just read what they have to say. Try to understand what they're saying. Don't just take the headlines. Go to their primary source. And also the media should be making more of an effort to report on this stuff accurately. And I don't care if it's somebody on the right or the left. Report it accurately. And the stuff I've seen about him the last couple of days, a lot of it's just been plain inaccurate. And go watch the videos for yourself, and you tell me if you think it's accurate. So again, we are here. We have just covered at Right Side Broadcasting Milo Yiannopoulos' press conference that he gave, to repeat some other big news that came out in the press conference, and it came out before the press conference, slightly before. Milo said he is resigning from Breitbart News. He said in the press conference he seemed to be very positive about Breitbart News. He didn't have any hard feelings towards them, at least as far as he said in the press conference. And he said he was resigning basically, roughly speaking, I'm just going off my memory here, that he didn't want them to have to deal with like the uproar about this, the controversy about all of this stuff that came out in the last couple of days with the videos and stuff. So he sounded like he made it sound like he was doing it for their benefit. As to whether this is the real reason he's resigning and whether he really has no hard feelings for them, given that they literally have not mentioned the CPAC Milo story on their site the last 2 days, I don't know. Again, you can come to your own conclusions about that. So I'd love to, while we're covering this, sorry, I'm just taking a quick drink here. My apologies. While we're covering this, I would love to get your comments and your reactions to the press conference. So if you'd like to send in your comments or send in your questions or whatever, two ways to do that. Go to my Twitter feed, @Lookner, @LOOKNER, and direct message me. And feel free, if you like this kind of breaking news coverage, if you follow me on Twitter, I'm happy to, I always send out tweets whenever we're covering live breaking news here, and I'm going to be covering it, so you can follow me if you'd like. Also, you can email me at steve.lookner@rsbn.tv. Let's go back and look at more ICE. I've gotten a bunch of messages here, so I'm going to try to get to them as much as I can. Will Regan says, I just want to say that I still stand with Milo. Thank you, Will, for writing in. Let's see. Anonymous Pen writes in, does this mean the left wins? Does this mean the left wins? That he resigned from Breitbart? Does it mean the left wins or that? So I'm guessing you mean, Anonymous Pen, given that he resigned from Breitbart and lost his book deal and was uninvited from CPAC, does the left win? Well, I'm not sure myself that the left was the one orchestrating all of this. It certainly seems like this was orchestrated by conservatives at CPAC, not the left. But maybe the left was involved. Who knows? Does the left win? Well, I think something Milo would say, he was asked a question like this, and something Milo would say is, this all just gives him more publicity and allows him to spread his message more. Milo has a message about that he thinks his free speech is getting shut down, not just his, but he thinks there's been this recent movement in this country over the last couple decades where people want to control what people say, and political correctness has gotten really big to the point where you don't have free speech anymore because you get like ostracized, or people are angry with you or try to shut you down if you say something different than what a certain group wants you to say. And he thinks that his message about free speech is resonating with people, and his message about political correctness is being overly burdensome and being oppressive has resonated with people. And so he would say that when something like this happens, fine, he can't publish his book in Simon & Schuster, although he can publish it somewhere else, and fine, he doesn't get to speak at CPAC. But I think from what Milo was saying in the press conference, it sounds like he would say, this just makes the movement stronger because it helps me spread the word. And certainly, I think when the protest at Berkeley happened a month ago, where the protests happened and he wasn't allowed to speak, between that happening and the stuff from the last couple of days happening, I personally think way more people have heard of Milo than ever would have before. I mean, I remember after the Berkeley thing, Tucker Carlson on Fox had him on for like a 20-minute interview at the top of his show. I don't think that would have even happened if the protest hadn't happened. So I do think his name is getting out there because of all of this reaction to him. And when the name gets out there, people look up what he has to say. And so, not that this was all orchestrated by the left, but if by the left wins, do you mean is his movement that he's trying to do get slowed down? I think he would say no. All of this stuff just helps get the word out about it. So thank you for writing in. Bernard says, "Hi, I thought Milo gave a good account of himself. But does it matter when his critics in the mainstream media will only believe false allegations of child abuse endorsement?" So when you say, does it matter, Bernard? Well, it matters in the sense that Simon & Schuster ain't giving him a book deal, and Bill Maher won't have him on again, and he's not going on Seth Meyers or he's not going on the Today Show or The View. So it matters what the mainstream media, how they treat Milo and how they portray him. That affects his mainstream media acceptability, and in his acceptability among some proportion of the population. But I think among other parts of the population, it doesn't affect it at all. So whether it matters that they do this just depends on what you think is important. And perhaps Milo doesn't care about having the mainstream media, have him on as a guest and publish his books. Perhaps he's okay with certain media outlets who he thinks are more, understanding of his view and willing to actually let him express his views. Maybe he only cares about reaching those media outlets. So good question, depends on how you look at the question. And I'm going a little fast through your questions because I just want to there's a lot of them here and I want to get to them. Once again, I'm Steve Lookner. This is Right Side Broadcasting. We are covering, we just covered the live press conference from Milo Yiannopoulos. He just gave it in New York, where, among other things, he said, I don't in any way endorse pedophilia. And it was just wrong to say that I did in these videos. And also, he talked about he was resigning from Breitbart. He said his book is going to come out with another publisher by the end of the year. He said he's starting his own media company or his media outfit, whatever that might be. Didn't give any details. He did say he will be focusing on education and entertainment in the remaining stages, in the next stage of his career. So we'll see what happens with that. So he said all these things. And if you want to write in here and give your take, we'd love to hear what you thought about this press conference, whatever you thought about it, and what you thought about the whole thing with Milo and CPAC and the book getting canceled and all that stuff. You can either go to Twitter. My Twitter handle is @Lookner, @LOOKNER, and you can email me there, direct message me there. I'll get your comment here. Or you can email me at steve.lookner@rsbn.tv. And speaking of email, I just want to check my email real quick to see if people have written in and answer some of those questions. So we have here, sorry, I don't want subject, I want sort by date. Okay, let me go through a couple of these. Curtis Cook writes in, is this a fall-on-sword.exe? It seems to me they spoke to him and told him to focus his energy away from the conservative movement. I suspect the religious right gets a say in this, and they can't have a flamboyant gay man representing the Republicans. So that is a comment from Curtis Cook. Curtis, thank you for your comment. Let me go to some other emails I have here. This is from Leo Przinski. Leo says, great following you, Steve. Thank you, Leo. Leo says, sorry to see Breitbart and Milo parting ways. Despite the fog of the current controversy, he is an eloquent voice for politically incorrect libertarian conservative views that are an integral part of the Trump Brexit movement. Thank you, Lee Przinski, who writes in that. So I will say this. This is just my personal view. I know that Milo in the press conference made it seem like everything was fine between him and Breitbart. However, all I know is that since the CPAC story broke, that CPAC uninvited Milo, there has been literally no coverage of that story whatsoever on Breitbart's homepage. None. Breitbart's homepage is a giant page. Go to Breitbart.com. It's not just the lead stories. It's like, 50 stories or something, if not more. You have to scroll down multiple times to get through the whole thing. And there was no coverage of the whole CPAC Milo thing whatsoever the last 2 days. I even checked an hour ago, right before the press conference. It wasn't there. I checked yesterday. It wasn't there. That, to me, says they distance themselves from Milo, because I see no other explanation for why a conservative news site would at least not cover the story. You could always cover the story and just say this happened with Milo and CPAC, and either not defend Milo or just say Milo Yiannopoulos is a Breitbart editor and just leave it at that. Or they can even put an apology and say we do not associate ourselves with these videos. But they literally didn't cover it. That would be like if the New York Times, so one of its people got like an Academy Award, or the New York Times, somebody with the New York Times got a Pulitzer Prize, and then like the Pulitzer organization took back the prize, and like the New York Times just didn't even report the news, and it's actually even worse than that, because for Breitbart, this is the news they report. They report political news and conservative news, and they never reported it at all. So to me, that suggests they were distancing themselves from Milo. That's just my personal opinion. Anyways, so let's see more of your emails and comments. I appreciate the ones I have seen so far. We have an email here from Andrew. Andrew says, I see similarities to the recent reporting of PewDiePie as a white nationalist supporter, Nazi supporter. This resulted in Disney severing ties with him. This has become an effective tool in silencing and delegitimizing anyone who does not fit a narrative. So the thing you're referring to is recently, both Google and Disney divorced themselves. I know it was Google. Was Disney too? I'm not sure about Disney, but you very well might be right about that. They divorced themselves from this internet personality, PewDiePie, who was, and I say Google, but it was YouTube, but YouTube is owned by Google. So it was some combination of that. I know YouTube, yes. Okay. Thank you. All right, so I just got in my ear, before I get back to my point, I just got in my ear that there is an ongoing situation at a Texas hospital, and we are monitoring that situation. So we want to just keep you informed that we're on top of it and monitoring it out in the newsroom out there. And I just real quick, I'm looking up here. Okay, so I'm seeing online there's reports of a hospital on lockdown at the Ben Taub Hospital in Houston, Texas, and there's reports of perhaps a shooting there, and we will keep you informed. This is in Houston, Texas, if there's any more news coming out of there. So just so you know. So anyways, so PewDiePie, there were some videos where PewDiePie, this internet personality, made some anti-Semitic jokes, and then these came out, they were publicized, and then a bunch of people, including Google, disassociated with themselves with PewDiePie. The commenter Andrew is saying he sees similarities between that and this. I looked over some of the PewDiePie stuff, and I haven't spent lots of time going through the PewDiePie videos, so I can't really intelligently speak on how similar these cases might be. But I will say in this case, from what I've seen, there's been no evidence shown to me that in these videos Milo condoned pedophilia. So that's what I'll say about that. Thank you so much for the email, Andrew. Katie Smith writes in. Katie says, I feel so bad this is happening to Milo after all he is doing to help very troubled young adults. That's from Katie Smith. Katie, thank you for your comment. We have here... hold on one second. I'm going to check out more of the emails here. Dean Sopko says, what do you think the odds are that we are at this moment looking at Milo at his most popular and or influential? That is, what are the chances that it goes down from here in terms of his popularity, you're asking Dean? A very good question, Dean. So, because somebody might say, well, he's not on Breitbart anymore. Is he not as popular? This is a very good question, and I don't see... so there's popular in different ways. I could see a world in which his message reaches even more people and more people actively follow him, but you don't see as much about him in the mainstream media. So maybe he's not as popular as somebody the mainstream media talks about, because mainstream media can get faddish talking about people. So I could see a world in which he's less popular that way, but also he still keeps expanding the people who actively, like, say, go on his site or read his speech, read his articles or watch his speeches. So I don't know what will happen. I don't think necessarily, though, that it's like a given that he'll be less popular just because he's not at Breitbart, because I think, in the conservative community, they know who Milo is. But I think a ton of people don't know who Milo is and are just getting exposed to him. So I do think his popularity, whatever that may be, has a long ways, a big potential upside. But as to whether it goes there, who knows? Maybe people won't want to read and follow him because of these remarks or because of what they think he said in these remarks. Who knows? Good question. We'll see what happens. Let's see here.
You've been listening to Right Side Broadcasting coverage here on the internet audio feed. Of course, Milo Yiannopoulos gives a press conference addressing some of the controversial comments and the backlash over those comments. Stay tuned to internet audio feed as this story unfolds. You are listening to the most interesting and thought-provoking sound from all of the World Wide Web. We are the internet audio feed, the sound of the internet.